it. Actually, we wanted to also talk to you about the Black Lives Matters. Would you like comfortable
Yeah,
talking?
of course. Yeah.
What do you think of this movement? Do you think it's positive, negative, or is it too soon to talk about?
I think much like any movement, growing up in a commune, like I said, and not being aware of racism until I was made aware of racism. I remember the first time I was 10 years old, when the first time a white person called me a nigger. And I didn't know what that meant. I thought it was somebody's name. And we were playing in a park, and this white man came up to me, and I'm 10. I have my two younger cousins with me, and he says, "Niggers can't play here." My response to him was, "Well, if I see this nigger kid, I'll tell him to leave." I know that this country is seeped in racism and the oppression of people of color. I know that the violence perpetuated here in this country is a part of the fabric of America. And I know that there's also a breaking point with that. I know that the inhumane treatment of a group will eventually lead to some kind of counter reaction. We've marched, we've sung, we've prayed, we've turned the other cheek. But at what point do you make a change? And see, I don't think racism has ever been an issue of people of color. People of color didn't create racism. That was a white concept, in the 1700s. Specifically rich white who wanted to separate the poor whites from the blacks because they didn't want them coming together and creating some revolution that we saw, like we saw in the French Revolution. But I think it goes back to a very, I think and all of this ties back to art to me. Art is a spiritual experience. As an artist, I think of art as my prayer meditation. And I think it lends itself to the healing of the ills of the world, of the ills of humanity, if applied properly. And I think that's a matter of change. I think the Black Lives Matter movement, what I found fascinating about this, as opposed to the many other Black Lives Matter before Black Lives Matter, is that you have far more white people and non-colored people were associated with this, where it took, George Floyd's murder for people to understand what my grandmother and grandfather, what my mother and father, what I've been saying for decades and centuries, that people are really understanding that, oh, this isn't an exaggeration. This is actually happening. And I can't even tell you like how many times in my personal life, even before drugs, that I was pulled over, stopped, followed in a store, how many times I was leaving my job at the Hollywood Bowl and with, say, $1,400 that I made for that night in my pocket and walking across the street where people would hurry to lock their car doors. It's an ugly thing that that requires a movement. It requires a revolution. It requires a spiritual evolution. And I'm just happy that it's not just Black people now marching, that it's people of every walks of life.
Right.
Because, what you do, my homeless series, Matthew's 25:40, in the scripture of Matthew's is, what you do unto the least of us, you do unto me. All of my work, I hope, really makes people understand how connected we are, so that that idea or concept of race or misogyny or homophobia or alienation of whomever is just eviscerated. It should no longer exist. Because your hatred of me isn't about me at all. That's about you. So we need to heal that first.
But you did say, there's another quote, I love quotes. And, when honesty meets art, it ends in an explosion. So let's be honest here, I think it's about taking accountability and seeing things as it is and stop wearing those pink glasses. And I think I loved the fact that people are awakening. We're going through a time of spiritual awakening, but social awakening where things are broader and more clear. But at the same time, there's a lot of confusion, and there's been, Sage, like there's been like a lot of censorship and people's voice being shut down in the media. I mean, we're going through that right now. How do you feel as an artist? What's your take on all this censorship going on? Because
well, listen, as an artist, and so what is the first thing any oligarch or Nazi or authoritarian or dictator, what's the first thing they all do? The first thing they all do: burn the books, confiscate the art, get rid of the creatives, lock the heretics up. They're bad. You understand that going into the game, that healing, like I said, healing creation is a spiritual experience. It precipitates the intellectual. I said this in one of the documentaries that I was a part of. Like art, it whispers to the eyes, it screams to the heart. And so, you understand that if you are going to try to censor me, like I was kicked off of Twitter.
Facebook, so here we go. High five.
Yeah, I've been in Facebook
Part
jail.
of the same group.
You and Donald.
Yeah,
We've done it.
I've been in Facebook jail so many times. I was just wear stripes and I go into it. You know that if your attempt is to censor me, if you're gunning for me, that means I'm doing something right. If you're angry at what I have to say through my creativity, that means I'll be doing something right.
Push the button.
I have a photo series, Rocks and Hard Places. Rocks and Hard Places from Castration to the Mendigo Complex. When Dylan Roof sat in that church for an hour, in a Black church in South Carolina, and stood up after an hour, he screamed out, "You rape our women," and proceeded to shoot that church up, killing 9 people, 9 souls who were there to worship, who brought him into their home. And he murdered these people, and most of them were elders. There was one woman, I believe, in her mid to the late 90s, who had literally probably cut one of her husbands or brothers or uncles or nephews down from a tree. Wow. From being lynched. She's somebody who probably had to sip water from this fountain and not that one. She was probably someone who sat at the back of the bus at one point. She was probably someone who marched and had water hoses sprayed on her or dogs let free on her. And she was a woman who watched the first Black president elected, United States president, the president of the United States. To have her life snuffed out by some deranged white man at 21 years old who screamed out, "You rape our women." It was infuriating, the hurt and loss of that. I did this photo series called Rocks and Hard Places from Castration to the Mandingo Complex, where I objectified the objectified. So it's a whole series of Black male genitalia. And I tag it kind of Mapplethorpe meets Malcolm X. And there's 2 pictures in particular that get a very visceral reaction from people. And those 2 were, people were trying to censor those. "Oh, you can't show this. You can't do that. You can't say that." Excuse me. And then I'm asking, well, why? Because I want to strike up a conversation. I'm genuinely interested in understanding your perspective. But the flag is burning? Yes. Well, you have a naked Black man with a burning flag. Okay. So what are you upset about with that? Well, Sage, people died for that flag. Yes, I agree. People have died for that flag. People have died because of it. And I had 2 grandfathers, both of whom fought in the World War II, and both were from the South, and who, when they were coming home from the war, men like them were being lynched in their uniform. So, I mean, you can't give reverence to a symbol unless you understand what that means, and you're demonstrating the beauty of that symbol.
Right.
You know, so we're
so it's a matter of perspective and widening up people's scope of understanding on, because people are standing on one position.
Yeah.
Very rarely they're actually going to, you know, the other position. And art is a way to stretch people's mind and, you know, scope on what's really going on the bigger picture, I think.
But we'll never get there if we choose to censor. I may not agree with you. A good friend of mine in LA, he's very conservative politically, and he and I mean, to me, it's some of the stuff that he posts is just like the most bizarre stuff ever. But I'm genuinely interested in how he came to this conclusion. I disagree with you venomously, and this is why I disagree with you. But I don't have to hate you. I don't even have to silence you. You could say what you could feel the way you want. I'm interested in understanding how you came to this conclusion. But if you're in turn trying to censor me and shut me down, then you'll never get the opportunity to understand where I'm coming from. And even if I am wrong, you'll never have the opportunity to show me where I'm wrong or how I'm wrong, because you've already diminished me. You've already silenced me. You've already cut my perspective out and threw it out the window. Excuse me.
Yeah.
You know, I don't have to agree.
Yeah, if only people could listen to that and on repeat.
Yeah, exactly.
I would just sort out so many problems right now. I mean, thank you for that, Sage, because that was needed. You know, people need to hear that.
That was great. Sage, so you're back in New York now. New York went through a very challenging time with the Black Lives Matter protests, but also with COVID. A lot of places closed down, will never come back up. I'm wondering, now you're being back there and you know the place so well, do you feel a different vibe somehow in New York now?
I do. I do very much so. And one of the things that attracted me to come back home is that very vibe. New York had become too, she had too many diamonds on.
Yes.
And she was far too expensive even to look at or to appreciate. I come from a New York where, you know, she had fishnet stockings with runs and, you know, platform shoes and a mini skirt. I come from the 90s New York, where it was just reveled in art and creativity. And yes, there were junkies and people ODing on Avenue C, but, you know, you had Basquiat and Keith Haring over here. It was, you know, it was that energy. She needed a new dress, but I think the fashion became too expensive and it became untenable to live. It became Disneyland in many ways and very exclusive. I remember coming home one of my trips home when I was early in LA. And I got a round trip ticket to Long Island. And I was like, how much are you charging me? Like $30? I was like, I'm not trying to buy the train. I just want to see like, and to see that through the transformation, I always tell people New York is like, you know, she's just this beautiful city that changes her wardrobe. And I think that right now, because of the trauma of COVID and everything else that's that has happened over the last couple of years, that there's a sense of urgency and energy here that is just so alluring for an artist. I think it's just it's this all of it, the tragedy of it, the beauty of it, the accessibility of it, and like coming home and you walk down a city block and every block is a masterpiece. Like every single block is a masterpiece, and you're just right with these stories and for writing and for shooting and, you know, to paint and everything right now to me is just like It's just so amazing. And
Yeah.
even the tragedy of it, even, the person right now smoking crack on the subway, because there is one right now smoking crack on the subway. And then, no matter how crowded that subway station is, but, there's someone right now doing something that lends itself to the energy and to the food, to the buffet of what New York is. And, what was that movie, Maine? Most people are too afraid to eat or feast. The line from that, life is a buffet, and most SOBs are afraid to eat.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, Auntie
Something like
May.
that. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think right now it's just such a beautiful place to be, and creating that energy. And hopefully we could, come to a wardrobe that's not, too expensive and not trashy, but somewhere in between,
Yeah. Yeah.
and create that.
So
Couldn't
why did
agree
you
with you
leave
more.
LA? What was uh, did you not feel creativity here anymore?
No. Okay, so I left New York. I was taken from New York, actually, because in the early 90s, when I just let everyone know that I was, in such pain and smoking crack and on the street. And my mom took me to Maryland to this rehab called RAP. And I stayed there for 6 months. And then I left there because, like I said, I've always had a foundation. Like, I've always been a good person in spite of my situation or how I felt about myself. I've always had a good heart. And I was, well exposed to a lot of things. So I had a decent vocabulary, and I was relatively intelligent. So even in that rehab, I started to become a counselor, and the counselors were, I kind of manipulated the situation where I wasn't accountable to my own disease or illness. And so I wasn't getting the treatment that I needed because I was manipulating a situation where I was helping everybody else. So I ended up leaving, and then relapsed. And I was going with this kind of rinse and repeat kind of a thing. And I was staying with this older dude, a friend of mine, Richard, and using drugs. And I was sitting on the couch, and I was watching Cops. It was a special episode of Cops. It was Cops LA. So it was like, bad boy, what you gonna do? So this guy goes to go buy some crack, and it's like this undercover sting, and they grab him, they throw him on the car, and and it's like, and it's like all this commotion. And I was like, I need to move there because I'll be too afraid to buy crack if I move there. So Richard, who was tired of me sleeping on his couch at the time, I guess, bought me a one-way ticket. I had a one-way ticket, two trash cans, two trash bags, the black hefty bags of clothes, a box of books, and he gave me a check for $50. And I knew one person in LA, whom I stayed with, a good friend of mine, Kurt, who ironically I'm roommating with now and back home in New York. And then kind of made my way. What happened while living in DC, that's where I started painting. And I didn't really paint before that because I was too afraid. I always felt that if you paint and you make a mistake, that you can't erase it. And so I started painting then. A friend of mine, Walter Neal, saw some of my drawings and took me to the art supply store. I've always had angels. I've always had some really great angels in my life. And that's how I started painting. But when I moved to LA, I stopped painting, and eventually I got sober. Was sober for 11 years, and then I had the relapse, a gnarly relapse. Huh?
It was a bad one. You almost
Oh
died.
yeah. I mean, I was smoking crack before, but this was another beast. This was something completely different. I mean, it literally almost took everything, including especially my soul. But it was such a gift because at that point I remember coming home to my apartment at the tail end of the relapse. This is December, right after my birthday. We had my first exhibit. It was a group show that I produced. My best friend Yuri, one of my best friends, Yuri Bushko, and I produced this show. It was a group show in November. in December, I came home after a few day run on the streets, and I had no more money. I had no more access to drugs. I had no more drugs, but I came back to my apartment with just in a tremendous amount of pain. And I had some old acrylic paints in the corner. I put some water in them, shook them up, laid down on the floor, and scratched out my first painting. And then I told everyone again, I was like, I'm dying here, and I can't do this by myself. I need help. They sent me to, I went to move into a sober living for a period of time. My job with Patina Restaurants, instead of firing me, they gave me time off. So I'm staying in the sober living. I don't have anything else to do but paint.
Yeah.
So I start painting, and I'm posting things on Facebook, just for giggles. It wasn't serious.
Yeah.
And right before then, I was named as one of the 40 Black artists to watch in the Grio. So it was such an irony because here, 2014. So I have this very prestigious honor of being named as one of the 40 Black artists to watch my life.
What about Sage? In 2 years' time, your paintings went from $250 to over 10K, and you accomplished that in 2 years.
Yeah, it's been interesting. It's kind of crazy.
Yeah, that's a crazy one, I think.
Yeah,
and 400, you actually painted 400 paintings? Over.
And that was just from DC, actually, over 400 paintings. Yeah. And when I would just give them away, like that was before, like I never thought of this. One of your earlier questions was, when did you think about being an artist? And I never really thought like this. It didn't dawn on me really. That first painting in 2014, I'm in the sober living. it was so funny because my life is in shambles, but I get this one of the 40 Black artists to watch thing. It was just like, this is crazy. I post a little watercolor on my Facebook page, and a friend of mine, Tim Benton, I went to high school with, called me up, and he was like, I love this piece. I want to buy it. And I was like, buy it. I was like, I'll just give it to you. Like, here, just give me your address. He was like, no, I want to buy it. How much? And so I think I'm being like this wise guy, right? I'm going to give you a number, which is going to be so outrageous that you'll say, oh, no, just okay, I won't buy it. You can send it to me. I said, $250. He's like, yeah, I'll take it. I was like, oh, shoot. And that's how it started. And then, from there, I had my 2 solo gallery exhibits in LA and various interviews and podcasts and other shows, and it's just kind of, it's humbling. It's really, it's humbling, and you don't know. I don't know how my work is going to affect other people. It's not something you consciously think about. Like Melissa, your painting. I know that Kent studied this in a very meditative way. He was very meticulous and purposeful with selecting that piece for you.
You do know that I don't even know the story on how I ended up having your painting. I was trying to figure it out. So right now I am actually having clarity because you just said I have something for you, and I'm like, okay. And so we live in the same building, and he came in and actually I went to his place and he showed me that painting, and I'm like, what is this? And then he told me that you left me that painting, but I could not put the dots together. So that was the mystery here. So I'm glad like that.
He was very particular. He was very particular. But as an artist, I just hope that I could be open and receptive to the process, and if it affects someone, through my films or spoken word, through the photography, through the painting, through my example.
We will post everything, your website, everything you're doing right now under the video and the link.
Oh, awesome! Thank you.
Your work, and And also, I have a last question for you.
Yes.
And so lastly, if the world was about to end tomorrow, and you had a last message for humanity, what would you say to them, to humanity?
It's a really great question. If the world were going to end tomorrow, what would be my last message to humanity? My last message to humanity, if the world were ending tomorrow, don't leave with a regret. Don't have regrets. Before this is over, just tell that person you love that you love them, even if you haven't spoken to them for 10 years. Don't leave with a regret. I guess that would be the thing. It's like, you know, the times that I've almost died, especially the time I got stabbed in the neck, that was the thing that was only the deepest thing I could think about. Am I proud of the man I am today? And I can answer that affirmative yes. Does everyone I love know without question that I love them? Do I know that they love me? Yes. There should never be ambiguity in love. Don't leave with a regret of ambiguity of loving. Let everyone you know, that you love them. Even the people you don't like, let them know, hey, I love you. Can't stand your guts, but I love you because they're gifted to us. You know, that's all I would say. Don't leave with a regret, and never let love be ambiguous.
That's so beautifully said. We like to, for the longest time I can remember, we end the program by reminding people, hey, you've got this technology that's free or relatively cheap. Use it to reach out to people and touch them, even if it's a 10-second whatever, because a lot of people, as we were talking about earlier, are such desperation or anxiety, and to know that there's someone there who thought about them, you're absolutely right. It's bang on. Yeah.
Thank you.
All right. Well,
great questions.
Well, great guest.
Yes.
Well,
thank you so much.
Yeah, we're gonna wrap up because we don't want to take, you know, like your whole day. You're 3 hours ahead of us, so still have to go on with your day. But it was lovely to have you on the show, Sage. It was a pleasure and an honor. Thank you so much for sharing everything and being unfiltered and truthful and honest and raw. And I think a lot of people are going to connect with what you said. And definitely, I encourage people to go and check your website, sagegalon.com. I will post the link and everything. Check his art, people, because it's amazing. It's provocative, it's raw, it's truthful, and it just hits you where it needs to hit you to wake you up. And Michael, would you like to say?
Yeah, I just hope we get to meet in person one of these days soon. Hopefully in New York, and check out the vibe with you and go to places you know so well and that have really helped to make you the person you are today. Salute you. It was an honor as well. And like Melissa said, I think we have listeners all over the world, Sage, and I think a lot of them are really going to benefit from what you said, your advice especially. It's really needed right now. So thank you so much. You're doing great work.
Thank you both. Thank you very much, Michael and Melissa. Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure and an honor.
Take care.
Love you. Take care.
In touch. Okay. Bye-bye. Bye.
Love.
Thank you again, Sage Galon. And yeah, we're looking forward to your next projects for sure. And yes, I just want to remind the guests to subscribe, like, and share so we can keep doing what we're doing, which is connecting the dots. So
you don't have to.
Yay, we got it.
I got it this time.
Yeah, we did. And we want to thank also our producer, assistant producer Pretty Bali, who is in the UK. And also I would like to personally thank Ken Speakman, who, put me in contact with Sage Galon. Thank you, Kent. Kent is the CEO of Connect TV, and we're looking forward to eventually, do some work together. collaborate. So yes,
Connect with Kent.
connect with Kent on
There you
Connect
go.
TV.
Yeah.
Sounds a good one too.
Yeah.
And
And-
yeah.
Yeah, I also wanted to add my thanks and thank you, Melissa, as well for facilitating this incredible conversation. As we said, yeah, we like to connect the dots so you don't have to, and we're so excited to be able to announce that very shortly our upcoming guest will be author, multi-award-winning journalist, and war correspondent Janine DiGiovanni. And we're going to be discussing her new book, The Vanishing: The Twilight of Christianity in the Middle East. Janine is someone who I think, like Sage, does not hide her feelings whatsoever. And she's someone who has worked around with conflicts around the world, and we'll also talk about conflict, how it arises, how it can arise very, very quickly without you almost not even noticing. She's very expressive, very controversial. Really looking forward to that one. On a final note, I think from both of us is Sage in the interview was talking about how really important it is to tell people you love them or that you're thinking of them. And like we always kind of like to end Global Impact is use this technology we have in front of us to reach out and touch someone who perhaps is going through a rough patch right now, who you haven't heard from for a while. But even a quick call or a text or whatever can make a big difference in someone's day. So please, we encourage you to do that. And thank you for joining us. And please, as Melissa said, tell others about Global Impact. We look forward to being with you again soon. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.